Good morning, everyone. My name is Shane, and this is Black Swan Revelations. I thought this morning I would do a bit of a Bible study on the book of Hebrews and share my insights, share my thoughts. And this might be a little bit different than anything that you've heard on the various YouTube channels, maybe perhaps even preached on a Sunday morning, perhaps. Because, as you know, I don't have commentaries in my Bible. I don't read the commentaries. My goal has been in the last 2.5 years to just spend time reading the Bible. And then I don't mind after I'm done reading, like the book of Romans or the Gospel of John. I don't mind afterwards looking at to see what other people say. But I find sometimes there are patterns where one person reads a commentary for someone else and then shares that commentary, and then that person sees that person's commentary and then shares that commentary, and it's almost like there's a pattern that it's just people reading the commentaries and talking about the commentaries rather than what the Bible says. And pretty much any video that I've watched regarding the book of Hebrews, they will say things like the book of Hebrews is not for us as Christians. It's not for us. It's written to the Hebrews. It's written to the Jews. And I've also heard people say that um, that the book of Hebrews perhaps was not written by Paul. And while it is true that there is no definite signature of Paul, if you're used to reading the Pauline epistles from Romans to Philemon, you can't help but see that this is written by Paul. Like it's the way it's worded is very similar to the Pauline epistles. Yeah, it's different in some ways, but there's a lot of stuff. Like if nobody said in the commentary, if nobody said this is not Paul or whatever, I think honestly you can't help but think that this is Paul writing the letter to the Hebrews. So, and that's what it's called. That's actually what the title of the book is called. So let's just go in mine says the epistle to the Hebrews. Now I think some other King James version Bibles will actually say the epistle of Paul to the Hebrews or something like that. But I want to just share an overall theme or an overall concept in the book of Hebrews, and maybe this will shed some light on you as to what it's about. So I think the glaring one of the biggest things that stands out when you read the book of Hebrews is there is a group of people that are looking for something better in another life. And you can see this theme is intertwined throughout the book of Hebrews. And let's go with the argument that this is Paul writing, because it'll make it easier for me to explain if I say Paul instead of an unknown author. I think Paul is trying to weave throughout the book of Hebrews the idea that what used to happen to men was before Jesus Christ died on the cross was there was always this fear that gripped us. And the fear was that when we're dead, that's it. We're basically done, back to dust, and then that's it. that was kind of a fear that gripped us. And why do I say it that way? There was a fear that gripped us. It would cause you perhaps to not do things that you know to be true, to stand up for yourself, to stand up for your faith, all this kind of stuff, if perhaps you knew that after this life, that's it, it's done. So instead, you're gripped by this concept that, man, if I stick my neck out a little bit for someone else, I'm done. I'm toast. There's nothing better for me. So I'll just mind my own business. And there was always this fear that would take hold of mankind. And it was basically since Adam and Eve partook from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they suddenly realized that they could be killed, that they could die. That was on their conscience, that was on their mind, that now they are counted as mortal beings. And before that, before they took of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, they had no concept of death. But as soon as they took that fruit, whatever it is, apple, fig, whatever, now they're aware of their mortality. They're aware of it. Same thing happened to Cain when he killed Abel. He's like, everybody's out. Everybody's going to kill me. Like, I'm done. I'm done. That is something that gripped man till, like I said, till Jesus Christ came and died on the cross and shed his blood. So that's one of the big themes. And then another theme is, again, to tie into this, that the ones that believe in Jesus Christ are waiting for a better life, as in a better resurrection. So they didn't care about what would happen to this body right here, this physical body. Because once they saw who Jesus Christ was, and we're talking all the way back to the Old Testament, we're talking about Moses seeing Jesus Christ. And once he saw who Jesus Christ is and was and will be and all this kind of stuff, he didn't want to be recognized as the son of Pharaoh. And he would rather suffer persecution on behalf of Christ because of what he saw. And he was, again, looking forward to another time where he would be able to live eternally, not just here on earth, but he's looking for a better country, a better city, a better home. This is a pattern that shows up throughout the book of Hebrews. Abraham had that, even though he was a wanderer, and God asked him, hey, go to the promised land. I'm going to make you as, your descendants are going to be, if you can count the stars of heaven, that's how many descendants you're going to have. And if you can count the sands of the sea, that's how many descendants you'll have. So it's kind of a dualistic prophecy, meaning I'm going to restore heaven, and I'm also going to restore earth as well. And you're going to be a blessing to all these nations because of that. Hopefully I'm explaining this well. So this isn't just about earth. It's also about heaven. Because there came a point where God could not trust those in heaven, the fallen ones. The devil managed to manipulate a third of the angels, a third of them. And because they had already tasted eternity with the Father and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, their judgment was sealed instantaneously. This is why you don't see them being corrected for the last 6,000 plus years. You don't see angels being corrected. You don't see the devil being corrected. Why? This is going to sound weird to say, but I'm going off the King James. It's because the devil is a bastard. There's no other way to say it. He has no father. God is not his father. He is a created being. And in the book of Hebrews, basically, if you're a son, you're going to be chastised by God the Father, meaning you're going to experience tough times, tribulations, people stabbing you in the back, and it's usually going to be the closest people to you. And if you can picture people going out on the front line and you're going around corners and stuff and you got your guns and everything and you're trying to see if where the enemy is, and then all of a sudden you get stabbed in the back and you're like, wait a minute, my best friend behind me stabbed me in the back. Well, these are the tribulations. This is not from God. This is not God doing this, but because we're here on earth, this is what happens to us. And it forms a bit of a correction in us, as in you learn, you get better, you get wiser with all these experiences, all these tribulations that happen, and you learn about suffering. The one thing that we have on our side that is an advocate for us is Jesus Christ suffered to the point of sweating droplets of blood. We haven't ever done that. At least I haven't. Maybe there's someone out there that is so innocent and has never done anything wrong and understands their demise 3.5 years into the future and understands what they have to do, but do it joyfully. And when you're moments away, all of a sudden you're thinking about it. The stress that you're actually going to be killed produces droplets of blood. That's what Jesus did for us. He became a witness to what it was like to suffer on every point. He was betrayed by people that were closest to him, Judas. He was betrayed by a nation that he was to be king of. He was betrayed by priests that he put in charge of his people as well, just constantly. And then also the Roman soldiers, Rome itself betrayed Jesus Christ by not accepting him and basically doing the will of the people. So Jesus Christ experienced temptation on every level. And if you think about temptation, it's not just about the idea of should I do something or shouldn't I do something. That's kind of a level one thinking of what temptation is. Temptation is also being uh, the possibility of being killed is right there. That's a temptation. This is what Jesus faced several times. People were trying to kill him, trying to stone him, wanted to push him off a cliff, all kinds of stuff. Those are the temptations. And he actually suffered these temptations on every level. He had the devil come after him. Like I said, one of his best closest friends, arguably Judas, because remember, he invested his life into 12 disciples. He invested his life. He never held anything back from any of them. They could have asked him any question at any time. And he divided them up 2 by 2 and sent them out into cities. Don't think that Judas Iscariot wasn't part of that. He had everything, and yet he betrayed Jesus. And Jesus was uh, beaten. And remember, we're talking about an innocent man that didn't deserve to be touched, the king of the universe. He did not deserve to be touched. And yet they touched him. They struck him on the face, not only with their palms, but also the rod. Like the Roman soldiers took a rod, knelt down. Imagine a rod, the same rod that Aaron had, that type of thing, a stick, and kneeling down in front of Jesus Christ and then standing up and taking a baseball swing, basically. So when we're reading Hebrews, you have to look at it from the lens of Jesus Christ understands everything that we will go through because he's done it. And then it's been amplified because, like I said, he sweated drops of blood. He was beaten with whips. They actually plucked off his beard, and he had to carry his cross. They nailed him to a cross with nails, and he experienced that separation, crying out to God for mercy, basically saying, why hast thou forsaken me? A quote from King David, basically from the Psalms. And why did he do that? Why did Jesus Christ do that? Well, he learned obedience. He learned what it was like to be a human on every level. He learned what it was like to lose a friend before their time. As um, in the case of Lazarus. Lazarus died, and he waited 4 days so that people can realize that he is the resurrection. That's one of the things that he was teaching. But when he showed up and he saw all the people mourning and crying, they realized how much Jesus Christ loved Lazarus. And Jesus knew that he was going to raise him from the dead, but he also experienced heartbreak. He could have empathy towards all those people that are around him, like they're experiencing loss because they lost someone, and they're also blaming him as well, because we do this. We blame God all the time. And Mary and Martha said, if you had been here, my brother would have lived. My brother would have lived. So in essence, almost saying, because of you, my brother's dead. Instead of because of you, my brother will live again. They were more on that side of really wanting to let Jesus know how they felt. So that's the theme throughout the book of Hebrews, that Jesus Christ understands us from every point. And an interesting thing that I never saw before, and again, you're not going to hear this on any other channel. When God swore in his wrath that those that came out of Egypt, talking about a portion, not all of them, but a portion of Israelites that came out of Egypt, he swore in his wrath that they would not enter into his rest. What was his rest? Well, at that time, it was entering into the promised land. It's called the promised land for a reason. That was to signify an area of rest, that they could enter into God's rest, and God would take care of them on every level. Their food, water, shelter. They didn't have to build homes. They could just go into homes. They didn't have to plant crops. They were already there. And there were a huge group of people that said, this is not a land of milk and honey. This is a horrible place. There's giants here that are going to eat not only us, but they're going to eat our children. So we had it better back in Egypt. We had it better there than here. So in fact, we're actually going to find a leader, and we're going to go back to Egypt because you lied to us, and this guy that you made to be our leader actually brought us out here because he was raised an Egyptian, and he's probably a spy for Egypt. He brought us out here because they ran out of graves in Egypt because of all the stuff, all the judgments you did to Egypt. They ran out of graves. So you brought us out here into the desert where there's no milk and honey. And you're bringing us into Canaan where there's giants. And you brought us here so that we can be buried here. That's the only reason. That's why you're an evil God. We don't trust you. We don't believe that you have something better for us. And God swore in his wrath that they would not enter into his rest because of unbelief, because they didn't believe in him. So they sent out 12 spies. 2 came back with a good report, Joshua and Caleb. 10 did not. And because it took them 40 days to go through the land to spy it out, and the reason they're spying it out is they're trying to find out all the weaknesses. What would be a good place to attack? And when they came back, 10 of them had a bad report. And because they were 40 days in the promised land, God said, I will punish you 1 year for every day that you're in the promised land. So 40 years you're going to be in the wilderness because of that. And God waited until all those people died, that first generation that did not believe. And again, it wasn't all of them, but the next generation, the children who were there, who were born basically in the desert, were able to enter into the promised land. It's kind of interesting. But God swore in his wrath that they would not enter into his rest. And what's interesting is the duality of our Heavenly Father is this, that when he says something 100%, then something else must be true 100% as well. Meaning, if he swore in his wrath that you are not entering into my rest because of unbelief, he is also swearing at the same time that if you believe, you will enter into that rest just because of belief. Because you have to think about it. If 100% of people don't enter into the rest because of unbelief, that means there's another percentage of people that will enter in because of belief. And that's another 100% of people. So you have 2 camps here. Those that don't believe don't enter into rest, and those that believe enter into rest. And God swore that because of unbelief you won't enter in, thus swearing because of belief you will enter into that rest. So if you believe right now as a Christian, you believe in Jesus Christ, you have entered into that rest. And because God swore that you can't enter in for unbelief, that means you can't leave because of belief. You can't enter in because of unbelief, and you can't exit because of your belief. Why? Because God has you in his hand. And Jesus Christ even said that no one can pluck anyone out of my Father's hand. They can't do it. The enemy cannot do it. And the devil is not being corrected today because God does not care to call him his son, but he did care about Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ was made to suffer for us so that we don't have to suffer. And today, yeah, you could see, okay, some people are suffering today, but it's nothing compared to the glory that we're going to have. That's the point. Because of what Jesus did on the cross, he did one action. All of us that believe in him get to enter into that rest. When? Today. Forever. It's eternal salvation. Once saved, always saved. Because if you think about it, if God says because of unbelief you're not going to enter into my rest, how can you say because of your belief that God will allow you to be taken out of your rest, out of his rest, because you believe? Where would you get that concept from that you believe, but all of a sudden you are pulled out, you're plucked away from the enemy? Where would you get that idea from? And again, this is the general theme in the letter to the Hebrews, that once God says something, it has to be done. It has to be fulfilled. So God made a promise to Abraham, and he did something interesting. He swore by two immutable things. One is when someone makes a promise, if they swear, like if I go up and I have a conversation with someone and I say, I promise to cut your grass for $20, you shake on it, it's a done deal. Why? Because we understood the agreement. I'm going to cut the grass. Maybe there's a transaction. Maybe it's for $50, $20, or whatever it is. Whatever. I'm just saying that's generally when you swear and you make a promise, it's as good as done. Now, if you swear, as in if I don't do it, you get my lawnmower or whatever it is, or you get the first cutting free if I don't show up on time. Like you add something to it. You make a promise. This is why we swear. We make promises. And it's very important to God to keep your promise. Why? Because that's his rule. If he says something, he's going to make sure it happens. So not only did he swear about, he didn't swear upon anyone else, but he swore upon himself because there's no one greater than himself. So he can only swear upon himself. And so you have that going, and then you have the second thing going where God cannot lie. So those are the two promises that we have. That when he speaks something, and he swore by himself that he would do it, and then he cannot lie. Why are we talking about the idea that we got to really wrestle through our salvation, as in regards to we need to try and figure out if we're saved, if we're not saved, because there might be some days where we're not saved. Like, it's weird. Like, once you're in, you're in. That's the book of Hebrews. And he talks about how the priesthood worked. And basically, you would have a priest that would come in, and they would bring the sacrifice of bulls, sheep, goats, rams, every type, birds, wheat, whatever the sacrifice is. And then once a year, the priest would enter into the Holy of Holies, and people would be good for a whole year, meaning nothing's going to be against them for those sins because they've been atoned for that year. And the priest would go once a year. So if you have Christ that never dies, and this is kind of an interesting thing too. So he died once on the cross for all eternity. So now we have someone that is our mediator for us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we can, because of all our transactions, everything that we've done in this life, we can actually run to him. And basically, you could think of it where he lives in an eternal city of refuge, because in the Old Testament, there was like 48 cities of refuge that people could run to. If you murder someone and you don't have time to explain, or not say murder, murders are a different thing. If you accidentally killed someone, accidentally, it was not your intent, you didn't wake up in the morning, you didn't plan it the night before, but you accidentally killed someone, you can actually run to a city so that nobody can kill you before you get judged. You can actually run to that city of refuge. And once you are, if the priest dies, you're basically free to leave that city of refuge. But there's also a risk that if you left the city too early, before your judgment, people can actually execute you on behalf of their family. So there was that fear. So you stay in the city of refuge until your appointment, your judgment, so they can figure this all out and figure out, were you there? Was there any witnesses? All this kind of stuff. And when you think about Jesus Christ, he is our eternal priest that will never die. And so you can continually be in that city of refuge forever, for all eternity. And this is also, again, another underlying theme that these people that died in our time were looking for a better city, a heavenly city that is New Jerusalem. They're looking for a better country, a heavenly country. And this is something that we can hang on to as well. So this is a very powerful book. It talks about why Jesus Christ, what he did for us is different than what the Old Testament, what the Levitical priesthood were doing. They're basically the sons of Aaron basically were not voted in. They were there because of their genetics. They were ordained. You have to take care of the tabernacle. Why? Because you're the sons of Levi. You have to take care of all the furnishings of the tabernacle. You have to take care of all the sacrifices and everything because you're a son of Aaron. But Jesus volunteered. He volunteered to take on all the sins of the world. This wasn't commanded. This was Jesus basically saying, here I am. This is what talks about this in Psalms, where behold, in the volume of the book, you have a body prepared for me, so that he empties himself into this body that was created a little bit lower than the angels. Why? So that he can die. So that he can be killed. Because then he will understand what it's like to be 100% man. He also understands what it's like to be 100% God. So God created him a little bit lower than the angels because he was looking for a way to be able to relate to us. He didn't take on the seed of angels, if you will, but instead he took on the seed of Abraham. Because after that, that's where the promise came from, is from Abraham. So that's a lot, but that's just my thoughts. Eternal salvation. Jesus Christ is better than anything here on earth because he understands everything better than any sacrifice, and really we can enter into that rest by knowing that we can come to him at any time, 24 hours a day. He understands what we need before we need it. I'd encourage you to read the book of Hebrews. Maybe you haven't heard it presented this way. You might hear it presented in different ways, that it's not for us to read. Just skip over Hebrews. It's about a different time and all this kind of stuff. But when you think about the idea of entering into rest, we're there right now because we believe in Jesus Christ. We've entered into that rest. So now we can go boldly before the throne of grace. We can just enter in like we're there. So if you like this kind of thing, if you got something out of this little Bible study this morning, I know the birds are a little loud this morning. I have a little bird nest there, so they're pretty excited. Feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone else, especially if maybe they're struggling. They're trying to figure out, what is the book of Hebrews about? What is it about? That's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.